Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Conversations of Courage. I am your host, Art Chat Daddy Sims. Glad to be back with you for another wonderful episode of Conversations of Courage, surviving the COVID-19 pandemic. This conversation, or conversations, I should say, was created out of wanting to talk to people of all walks of life about surviving the COVID-19 pandemic. We've talked to everyone from doctors to singers to just everyday housewives and even students about what did you experience during the COVID pandemic. The whole purpose of this conversation is to find out, where did you find your peace? How did you either regain or keep your health? And most importantly, was there any happiness that happened during this time? We are well aware that we've lost many lives and that many people have battled COVID and are continuing to battle COVID, but we wanted to have this conversation to be able to encourage and inspire people to continue to live your best life and move forward. My first guest today is a gentleman who I have much respect for. He's a business leader, motivational speaker, and a best-selling author. I've had many wonderful conversations with Mr. Orlando Cesar, and I know that today is no exception to the rule. Good afternoon, sir, and welcome to Conversations of Courage, Surviving the COVID-19 Pandemic. How are you, sir?
And a gracious good afternoon to you. And as you know, I'm always between great and fantastic, because it's great to be alive and we have a fantastic opportunity to make a difference. Therefore, I'm glad to be here. And how can I help?
Very good. Well, thank you so much. You're always so optimistic whenever I talk to you. But I do want to kind of go back and, if I could, and share a timeline with you. And then we can have this conversation about what is now known as the COVID-19 pandemic. We really have only heard about pandemics from 1818, 1819, and now we are living in modern times of a COVID pandemic. So let me give you the timeline. January 21st of 2020, the first confirmed case in the United States. It was a man in his 30s from Washington State who had traveled to Wuhan, China, and was diagnosed with the novel coronavirus. And as we all know, Wuhan is again in China. So Japan, South Korea, and Thailand were reported to have cases days later. Fast forward to March 13th of 2020, COVID was declared a national emergency by then President Donald Trump, which pretty much shut everything down. March 15th of 2020 is when the CDC warned against large gatherings, things like festivals, conferences, parades, sporting events, weddings, any of those type of things had to be shut down. And as this pandemic grew, more and more things started to be shut down. Mr. Cesar, I want to find out from you, what was the first thing that went through your mind when you heard COVID-19 and we went into the pandemic?
First thing I thought of is we're going to go into a rough patch, a rough road. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a crisis. And as what happens with crises and challenges, there are going to be those who are going to freak out. And then there are going to be those who are going to follow the procedure, follow the science, and they will be okay. But I knew it was going to be something bad. Since my career is in the pharmaceutical industry, I'm familiar with, we had antibiotics and things of that sort. So we kind of know the bacteria and the viruses and that they don't play. And so we have to look to those folks who are science oriented to give us guidance. And as you know, with anything science oriented, you're going to have some people who are going to align with it, and you're going to have other people who are not going to align with it.
Right.
And you know, people were going to freak out, and people freaked out. So it became, when you start thinking of how am I going to maintain my poise when the world around me is freaking out?
Yes, absolutely. Well, if I could ask you, and that was wonderful what you shared with us. That's right. You did have an illustrious career in the pharmaceutical industry. what as a father, a husband, a brother, a son, what things did you necessarily do to keep your family at peace during this time? This meant isolation. This meant, no generational gatherings, all of that. So as the leader as you are, what advice or what words did you say to your family during this time?
Okay, we talked about the importance of following the recommendations that were being made. And I'm the oldest of 11 kids. And so there was quite a while when I was not able to see my mother, which was incredibly unusual. Um, but we had to adhere to it. We knew it was going to be tough. So, we talked on the phone a lot and we talked outside windows a lot. We did all of those kinds of things that we knew we had to because we wanted to survive through the pandemic. I have a brother, Sheldon is an internal medicine doctor, and he's always had us focusing on our immune system. So, we had vitamin D up to here, and we had looked up the different tests, and he was like kind of ahead of a lot of people too when he said that you had to have the vitamin D, and many of us are vitamin D deficient.
Mm-hmm.
So we loaded up on our vitamin D, and he had some other things that we did too. So we did that to stay in line. We followed what the recommendations were. Uh, we spoke a lot, we talked a lot, and we trying to touch base with each other and see how each other was feeling because it was a tough road to hoe. And if you look at my job, motivational speaking, is generally in person. So now you Zoom, and everybody's world is changing. My daughter, she's a manager of a restaurant, so restaurant shut down, and so
Mm-hmm.
now she's at home, trying to work things out. My son worked for Motorola, so they had that kind of thing they had to work with. So everybody had to make some changes. And one of the things that we've always talked about as a family is that there are needs for adjustments. When something happens, my wife and I, we talk as we get older, So you get older, so what does that mean? You have to adjust. You have to tone down some things a little bit. So we're always talking about flexibility, versatility, agility, and at the same time, being able to make the adjustments to allow you to do the things that you need to do.
Let me ask you this, being the oldest of 11, being that warrior that you are, I love the fact that you said a lot of window celebrations, drive-by celebrations, things like that. Was there at any point any fear in your heart did you still go to the grocery store during this time? Did you still do some of I know you like to work out quite a bit. How did your schedule adjust to dealing with don't touch, wear a mask, social distance? How did you deal with that?
I did all of those things, first of all. I did my social distancing. I did my 6 feet, washed hands. I did all of those things as I was required to do. Uh, because what you want to do in a pandemic or anytime things changes, you want to preserve your routine as much as possible.
Right.
So we needed to go to the store. So how do we go to the store safely? We need to visit people. How do we do that safely? So once again, adjustments. But I did most of the things that I did, except I didn't run around with a whole lot of people. I mean, church services, we did it over Zoom. And those were kind of nice because not only could we talk about the spiritual matters, but I would give a motivational segment at the end of the service that we did with our small group after the service. So I had a poem or something like that that I'd bring up and I'd read to get people oriented on how to keep their faith the way it should be to keep them stronger.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, how do you keep things as close to normal as possible? How do you try not to freak out? Because people are looking to me to see how I respond to things. Because
Yes.
one of the things I talk about all the time is if I talk about how to be an impact player and how to be a difference maker, step number 6 is, setting an example. So how are you going to be the role model in all of this? If I
Mm-hmm.
tell you to do this, and then I'm doing something different. If I tell you to be calm and I'm freaking out, that's going against the things that we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Very good. Very, very good. Thank you for that. I want to kind of tap into the business leader, if I could, to talk to you about if you had a crystal ball or if you could see into the future. I know you're a gentleman of leisure now. You're still a motivational speaker that would travel. What do you think? Where are we headed? Let me put it like that. Where are we headed with our business future? A lot of office spaces will never be at 100% occupancy. A lot of people have found themselves working from home. You and I both have talked and laughed about, we never knew that we would be able to do what we're doing now. I joke with other guests that I used to watch this on the Jetsons, and now we're living in the Jetsons era. What do you think of the future of business?
of course, business will always be here. Um, and business will make modifications based on the changes that we've seen. Uh, my last job in the pharmaceutical company, I was the senior director of diversity and work life. So we handled that the work life balance idea and so forth. And one of the things that we found is that companies were notoriously suspicious of their people if they weren't at work. If I can't see you working, I have some doubts about if you really are working. And one of the dilemmas that we had was, how do you get the company to let go and let people stay at home and work? And there was some data that said that people actually were flexible at home and actually worked harder and you got more out of them. Now, so by doing that on a grander scale, and you're seeing thousands of companies having their people at home and noticing that the productivity is going up, you're going to get some companies that are going to release or the reins a little bit. But there's a part of me that says that once things get back to stability or a new normal or whatever you want to call it, there's going to be that tendency to want to get these people back where you could see them.
That's right. That's right. I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, once we feel good about it and everything's gone, everybody going back to normal, and we know that we got a company solvent, everything is going well. How can we slowly have a little bit more meeting and FaceTime? Because we have these buildings here. Otherwise, you're gonna have ghost town.
Oh,
And that's not
absolutely.
good. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I was told that, office space nowadays that, itty bitty companies now can have fabulous office space because there are so many vacancies and people giving up, all the space they had before. And a lot of these buildings are really suffering because they're not at 100% occupancy. And another thing we need to think about are all the parking garages.
Yes.
Right.
And the companies that have gone out of business.
That's right. That's right.
Are releasing their space.
Yes.
So how are we going to do it? Which could be a golden opportunity for some small entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Who wanted to have, presence to their clients, and then now they have space that looks pretty good.
That's right. You're right. You're absolutely right. Well, very good. Now, I heard you mention that your brother is a doctor. I've talked to him many times. He's a wonderful doctor. Let's talk about how did health work during this pandemic? I noticed you mentioned vitamin D, and your brother's all about gut health and immune. Did you do anything? Did you gain the COVID 20 pounds? Did the missus cook any? No, you stayed to the regiment.
No, I don't know if it's vanity. But when I work out, I used to tell people all the time, I don't work out because of the sheer joy of sweating and working out. I work out because of the pain of getting back in shape. Yeah. I know what that feels like, trying to get back in shape. So where we live, we're kind of fortunate because I can go out and walk. There are a couple of lakes in my development, so I can jog around the lakes. I can walk around the lakes. My wife would walk up and down the driveway. We have, equipment in the house that we can use. So we made sure that we got out and got the exercise that we need, because we know that if you don't do something, once again, back to your regimen and your routine, if you don't stay as close to your routine as possible, you're going to fall off the wagon, and then you're going to be talking about, oh my gosh, look what I did. I gained this weight. It's going to be difficult for me to get back to where I need to be. So probably, I won't say I didn't gain anything, but I got a couple in there, but I was close to where I needed to be. And on top of all of that, in January, I was walking downstairs with a vacuum cleaner and something else, and I actually fell downstairs at home.
Oh no.
12, 12 stairs, uh, hit the bottom, uh, pulled up my pant leg, and my kneecap was standing straight up. And I said, that doesn't look good. So I pushed that down. And to fast forward it, when it was all said and done, I had disconnected my quadriceps from my kneecap. So I had to have surgery to get those attached. Uh, then I had to go through the rehab process. So did that. So I had exercises to do on top of the usual things I had to do. But then, how do you keep your mind straight when you're going
Right.
through all that?
Yes.
So when I went to work out, I had people laughing. Yeah. And one of the things that, because I always talk about how to be, well, if it's not fun, it's not fair. And if it's not fair, it's up to us to do something about it because we do have the power of change. So I wrote more during that time. For example, I would tell people, I have a word of the day for you. And they say, oh, really? What is it? I say, goals, GOALS. Now, since I like acronyms, to me, that means go out and love somebody.
Oh,
So, whatever your goals are during the course of the day, at least let one of them be to go out and love somebody. And so I wrote my way to health. I wrote my way to happiness, to going on the things that I needed to make myself keep myself straight and remind me to be on that path that I needed to be. And as I wrote things, I also disseminated to other people. So they were on, I put them on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. So, because you realize when you go through something tough, that it's not all about you.
right.
And the more I could shift the focus from woe is me, this is happening to me, to how can I generate something that could help somebody else? Because you go through, I sit back, we are in a very selfishly oriented world. But you kind of know that if you do something and it's just for you, then that feels good. But when people come up to you and say, you said something that helped me, or you had no idea that I was watching you, I saw how you handled a particular situation, and that helped me through. I was the product manager for breast cancer drug years ago. And when you would hear people say things like, I saw the way she conducted herself when she was going through her breast cancer therapy. And I
Mhm.
said, if I could be just a little bit as strong as she is, and she may have never known that she motivated that person, but just the way she comported herself and held herself up during that time helped other people because it's
Wow.
not all about us.
Right. Right. You're absolutely right. Well, the last part of this conversation was about happiness. But here's the deal. You've shared nothing but joy, happiness, and the truth this entire conversation. So, in closing with my audience today, what would you like to leave us with? I always know you want to leave us with something. I'm going to give you the full screen and let you leave us with whatever you want to leave us with, and then we'll close out.
Okay, think about we talk a lot about survival skills and what those need to be to get us through the pandemic or to get us through our lives. But I want us to take a moment on occasions to talk about our arrival skills. I want us to talk about how do we show up for ourselves and how do we show up for other people. And when you start looking at your arrival skills, you start looking at your attendance. Do you show up? Are you predictable in your showing up? Can people rely on you? Can they count on you? So, what is your attendance like? Then, when you look at the attendance, I want you to think in terms of your appearance. How do you look when you're there? Do you look as if you're engaged with what's going on? Do you look as if you are really in the game. So what is your appearance like? I'm not talking about necessarily dress for success, but what's your appearance like when you show up? Then I want you to think in terms of, what's your attitude? Are you optimistic? Are you positive? Are you looking for ways to prop people up, to lift people up? Or are you the one that they can always count on to try to say a negative word? I was in church once and I was conducting a meeting of, I was the superintendent of Sunday school. So we're having a meeting with the teachers. And one of the guys raised his hand. He says, I was a deacon. He said, Deacon Cesar, can I play devil's advocate? I said, man, we're in church. Do we need a devil's advocate in church?
Right.
And we chuckled about that a little bit. But so what is your attitude like? And when you walk into a room, I want your awareness to be heightened. I want you to see the people that are there. I want you to recognize where they may be. When I talk to a manager, I said, I want you to know the coordinates of your subordinates. In other words, I want you to know where they are so that you can meet them where they are. So when you're thinking in terms of your survival skills, yes, those are very important. But what I want you to also think about are your arrival skills. How do you show up? Do you show up? And when you show up, do you show up from a posture of service, helping them become better?
Wow, how beautiful. Thank you so very much. Ladies and gentlemen, for more information about Mr. Orlando Cesar, you can visit orlandocesar.com, orlandocesar.com. Motivational speaker, proven business leader, and best-selling author. Mr. Orlando Cesar, I look forward to chitting and chatting again with you. You always bring the best whenever we get together. And I thank you so very much for taking time out of your schedule to talk about conversations of courage surviving the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's always an outrageous good time. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another edition of Conversations of COVID. I am your host, Art Chat Daddy Sims. I am also the creator of the original Real Deal Relationship Chat and the Real Chat Daddy Show, which is aired nightly on various social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Coming soon, we have other platforms. For more information about me, please visit therealchatdaddy.com. Again, that's therealchatdaddy.com. Thank you, Mr. Cesar. I appreciate you. Keep doing the best ever. You inspire me, sir. I really appreciate you.
It's mutual.
All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. And stay tuned for another edition of Conversations of Courage, Surviving the COVID-19 Pandemic with Chat Daddy. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.